Welcome, dear students of 6th standard. Today we will see the second part of our fourth chapter, sorting materials into groups. In first part, what you have already understood, that what is material, what are different types of materials, and why it is sorted out. Materials or the objects are sorted out into the groups on the basis of their appearance, that is hardness, transparency, color and shape. And also you have already studied that the given materials can be made up of large number of objects, and it is also possible that an object could be made up of single material or of many different types of materials also. So now today we will see the different properties of material. What do you mean by properties of material? The features or the characteristics of a material, such as its appearance, hardness, solubility or insolubility, density, and transparency, are called its properties. All these properties of the given material you will study in this part of the chapter. What is the first one? Have you ever wondered why a tumbler is not made up of piece of cloth? Recall our experiment with a piece of a cloth in chapter 3. And also keep in mind that we generally use a tumbler to keep a liquids. What does the use of a tumbler? Generally we fill different types of liquid in a tumbler, that is the soap water and water. Therefore, would it not be silly to use a tumbler which is made up of cloth? Yes, it is very silly. What we need for a tumbler is a glass, plastic or a metal or other such materials that will hold the water. Similarly, it would not be wise to use a paper-like material also for cooking vessels. So we see then that we choose a material or to make an object depending upon its property and the purpose of which the object is to be made. So from this using a cloth tumbler, it is very silly because water will not hold in a tumbler which is made up of cloth. Other than also water will not hold if the tumbler is made up of not cloth, but if it is made up of piece of a paper, will it be hold the water? No, water will also not hold in a tumbler which is made up of paper. So from this what you understood, that we can take choice of a material can be made of making some of the objects depending upon its property and also the purpose of which the object is to be used. We are writing on a paper, right? It is very easy to write on a paper with the help of a pencil and a pen. But if the papers are made up of metals or a cloth, will it be easy to write on it? No. The purpose of writing will be there, but it will not be too fast and easy to write on it. So it is always the paper is made up of the pulp of a wood. So it solves and also our books are made up of paper. So similarly, some of the utensils are not made up of wood or a paper because it will catch the fire easily when we cook and we'll keep it on a fire or a stove, then it will catch fire easily. So wood and paper is not used for making utensils, rather than the metals are used for making cooking utensils. So it melts on a very high temperature and it will not easily catch fire. The metals will not catch fire easily, and so the cooking utensils will also not catch fire easily when it is kept on fire. So what are all properties of the materials that would be important for their usage? Some properties are discussed here. Materials that have such a the first property of this material is appearance. Materials usually look different from each other. Wood looks very different from iron. Iron appears different from copper or aluminum. At the same time, there may be some similarities between iron, copper and aluminum that are not there in wood. You can see that iron, copper and aluminum are metals and wood is not a metal. but the appearance of both the other things are different. That metals will be shiny, whereas the wood will be not shiny. So by the appearance, so properties of appearance, you can classify some of the objects into shiny and dull. That you will study in activity 3. See, collect some of the pieces of different materials, that is paper, cardboard, wood, copper wire, aluminium sheet, chalk. Do any of these appears shiny? Yes. How you will find it out? Separate the shiny objects into a group. Now observe as a teacher cuts into material into two pieces and look at the freshly cut surface from figure 4.3. What do you understood? Does the freshly cut surface of some of the materials appears shiny? Yes. Include these also objects also in the group of the shiny objects. Do you notice such a shine or a luster in other materials? Cut them anyway as you can. Repeat this in the class with as many materials as possible and also make a list of it with or without luster. Instead of cutting, you can also rub some of the materials with sand, paper to see if it has a luster. See, some of the materials are to be cut like this with a scissor, so that sometimes edges of some of the material will appear shiny. From this classification, you can say that some of the materials like paper, cardboard, cotton, wood, chalk will appear dull. When you will see that paper, some of the shining materials will be stick on the paper, then it will appear shiny. Otherwise, the paper will appear dull. Cotton always will be dull. Wood will be dull. Chalk will be the dull appearance. Whereas metallic chain, aluminium foil, copper wire, silk cloth, steel utensils, this will appear shiny. So we can classify this from the appearance that some of the objects will be shiny and some of the objects will be dull. So first topic or property of the material is appearance. From shiny and dull, we can classify some of the objects into shiny and dull materials. Now see, materials that have such a lusters are usually metals. Iron, copper, aluminium and gold are examples of metals. Most of the metals are shiny. When you cut them also, it will be appear shiny. Some metals will often lose their shininess and appears dull because of the action of the air and moisture on them. Some of the metals usually we are using nowadays in our daily life will appear dull. Why they will be dull? Because it will create an action of air, that is the oxygen and moisture action will continuously on that material, and because of the chemical reaction it will be dull. But once you polish it, once you apply some of the sandpaper, if you rub it on, then it will again be shiny. And also if you will cut that material, then also it will be shiny. We therefore notice the luster only on the freshly cut surface. When you visit an ironsmith or a workshop, look out for a freshly cut surface of a metal rod to see if they are luster. Now see the second property of this material, that is hardness. When you press different materials with your hand, some of them may be hard to compress while others can be easily compressed. So materials can be classified into soft and hard materials. When we touch some of the materials, you will be able to understand that some are soft material and some of them are hard material. It is very hard to compress them. You can take some of example of a metal key. Try to scratch it with it. A surface of a piece of a wood, aluminium, a piece of a stone, a nail, a candle, chalk. So many materials you can see. It is a hard and a solid material which is very hard. It cannot be easily scratched out. So this type of materials are called a hard material. Materials which can be compressed or scratched easily are called soft material, while some of the materials which are difficult to compress are called hard material. For example, cotton or sponge is a very soft material, while iron and wood, some of the metals, aluminium, all the materials like wood, plastic is a very hard material. In appearance, material can have different properties like lusters, but hardness be rough or smooth. Can you think of some of the properties that describe the appearance of the material? Now, the third topic of the property is soluble or insoluble. So with the example of activity 4 and 5, you will study this property very easily. Activity 4. Collect samples of some solid substance such as sugar, chalk powder, salt, sand and sawdust. Take 5 glasses or beakers. You can take 5 glasses, fill each of them with 2/3 with water. Add a small amount of sugar to the first glass, then add a sand to a second glass, then in third one sugar, then in fourth one chalk powder, and in fifth one sawdust. What will happen? And leave it for some minutes, sometimes. Then add small amount of all the things and stir continuous contents of each time with a spoon. Wait for a few minutes. Observe what happens to the substance added to the water. You can see in figure 4.4. Now note your observation as shown in figure 4.3. You can do this experiment at home nowadays. Now all this material you might be having at home only. If one of them is missing, then it's okay, but you can do it at home. See, salt will disappear slowly, completely in water. Sugar will also disappear completely in water. Sand will sink down and it will not disappear. You can see it in the bottom of the glass. Chalk powder will remain float in the water and sawdust will also remain float in water. From this experiment, what you understood? That you will observe that salt and sugar will completely disappear in water, whereas sand, chalk powder and sawdust do not disappear which it will not dissolve in water. So you will classify that from these 5 objects, and salt and sugar is soluble in water, whereas sand, chalk powder and sawdust is insoluble in water. Other substances do not mix with water and does not appear even after we stir for a long time. These substances are called insoluble in water. Water plays an important role in the functioning of our body also, because it is a universal solvent and it can dissolve a large number of substances. So, do you find the liquid also dissolve in water? We have already seen some of the solid materials like salt, sugar and sand. That what was the result after dissolving them and stirring with and mixing with water. Now see that how does the liquid will dissolve in the water or not. Collect samples of vinegar, lemon juice, mustard oil or coconut oil, kerosene or any other liquid. You can take petrol or diesel also. You can take milk also. Take a glass tumbler, fill it with half with water. Then add a full spoon of 1 by 1 liquid and stir it well and let it stand for 5 minutes. Then observe them whether the liquid mixes with water or not. Repeat the same with all other liquids. As many different liquids you are having it with you at home, you can try this experiment at home. Then after the experiment, what do you find? What you will find? That vinegar will mix as well. Lemon juice will also mix as well, whereas mustard oil, coconut oil and kerosene will not mix. If you have taken some of the cold drinks, it will also mix well. If you will take a milk, then also you will find that it will mix well, whereas oil will not mix. Kerosene, petrol, diesel will not dissolve completely in water. We notice that some of the liquids get completely mixed with water, while some others do not mix with water and form a separate layer when kept aside for some time. Bujo suggests that we also check if the liquids that we used in activity 5 may mix well with some liquids other than water. You can try the experiment with vinegar and lemon juice will mix together, vinegar and oil will mix together rather than water, and afterwards we can discuss it afterwards when you come back to the spoon. Paheli is curious to know whether gases also dissolve in water. We have found that some of the solids dissolve in water, some of the liquid also dissolve in water. But what about the gases? Some gases also are dissolved in water, whereas others are not. Water usually has small quantities of some gases dissolved in it. For example, oxygen gas dissolved in water is very important for the survival of the animals and plants that live in water. From that example of the animals and plants which lives inside the water and gets the oxygen from the water that is there. So from that we can see that oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen and carbon dioxide is always and hydrogen, nitrogen and oxygen is always present in water. So from this test, carbon dioxide was also dissolved in water. You can find some of the carbonated drinks like Pepsi and Cola. Then in that CO2 is always dissolved in some of the liquids. So you can find that some of the gases are soluble in water. So now you understood the property of some of the materials. First one we already seen, appearance, that is shiny or dull. Second one is hardness, that is soft or hard. And third property is solubility, that is soluble in water or insoluble in water. Third property. Now see the fourth property of this chapter, objects may float or sink in water. While doing activity 4, you might have noticed that insoluble solids separate out from water. You may have also noticed that some liquids in activity 5, some of these materials that does not mix with water floated to the surface of water. Other may have sunk to the bottom of the tumbler, right? We notice that many examples of the objects that float in water or sink. Dried leaves fallen on the surface of the pond, a stone that you throw into this pond, few drops of honey that you let fall into a glass of water. What happens to all this? That we will discuss about density of the objects, that is object may float or sink in water in the next part of this chapter. Thank you.